This is a recording from a Sunday meeting of the BC Humanist Association in Vancouver. The opinions expressed in this podcast do not necessarily reflect those of the BCHA or its board of directors. To learn more about humanism and to support our work, visit bchumanist.ca, and make sure to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and be sure to subscribe to the BC Humanist podcast.
Thank you for having me. My name is Armin. I'm here to talk to you guys about ex-Muslims and how they have been betrayed by the left, and also how the reform movement is not a good substitute for the ex-Muslim movement. Well, the title here is different, but you'll see where I get it. So this is me around age 11 or 12, I'm not sure. But that's my mother. I'm kissing the Quran. That's what you do on the first day of school, just for good luck. The funny thing about this is that none of us in the family, neither my mother or me at this point, have ever read the Quran. And we have no idea what's in it. But we venerate it, we kiss it, we bring it out during New Year. We never leave it on the ground. We make sure that if it's always the top book, there's no other book on top of it, but we've never read it. I have now read it. I've read the Quran more times as an atheist than I've ever had as a Muslim. Among my friends, and even I didn't used to pray that much until my teenage years. I became a little bit radicalized, but none of my friends also, the friends that fast, friends that pray five times a day, even them never read the Quran cover to cover. So I just want to make it clear, when we atheist activists, when we are criticizing the Quran or the Hadith, the reason why we think that's not really an attack on Muslims themselves is because most Muslims have no idea what's in their book, just like most Christians have no idea what's in their Bible. And another point is that even less than the Quran, most Muslims have never read the Hadith. The Hadith is where most Islamic law comes from. 95% of things that you're supposed to do or not do as a Muslim does not come from the Quran. Quran has very little instructions on how to live. So even among the minority of Muslims that have read the Quran or know the Quran, among those people, a very small minority of them have read the Hadith. So when my other atheist activists, when we say Islam is a violent religion, or is oppresses women, or is homophobic, and then people come and say, well, I have Muslim friends, they seem like nice people, most Muslims are not violent, most Muslims are peaceful, good people. Well, there's a difference between talking about Islam and scripture and talking about Muslims. Just like there's a difference between understanding what Christianity teaches and what Christians do and are like. Even though the actual Islamic law is not really practiced by many Muslims, it does creep into government and it does creep into power, because religion is a very good tool to oppress. So you can see that one of the hadiths, which is one of the Islamic laws, which is that you're not supposed to leave Islam, right? If you're a Muslim, you're Muslim for life. So in many countries, it's a criminal act just to change your mind about Islam, right? When I was born, on my birth certificate, it said Islam. So nobody even asked me if I wanted to choose, because I was a Muslim because my father was a Muslim. And I never had the chance to leave it. And in Iran, you can see, that's where I was born, it's in red, right? So if I go back, I'm supposed to be killed. That's why I can't go back. When my mom got cancer, I couldn't go see her. I wanted to, but my dad warned me that if I wanted my mom's last memory to be me in prison, right? there's a lot of people there that are atheists, but most of them are not very public about it, right? So I wrote a book, I blogged about it, I made a website. So even though there's a lot of people, when I was there, I became an atheist, and I talked about it to my friends and family. That's kind of stupid, but still not as risky as being that open about it. So now I don't feel safe going back. A lot of people say, again, well, there's nowhere in the Quran that says that if you leave Islam, that you're supposed to be killed. And that's true, but it's in the Hadith, right? And some reformist Muslims and some liberals try to claim that, well, it's Hadith, who knows which Hadith is right, which Hadith isn't right, which ones are authentic. That's book, the Bukhari one, that's one that is not debated among Muslims. That's one of the most authentic Hadith books. There are 6 Hadith books that all Islamic schools of thought agree on the fact that it's authentic. And this is one of them. So this is not something that they debate, whether if it's actually Muhammad saying or not. And some minority of Muslims, they believe that only the Quran should be taken seriously, and not the Hadith. But they are a very fringe group of Muslims, and the Quran itself mentions that you have to follow Muhammad's way of life to live a perfect life. And the only source to see how Muhammad lived is the Hadith, or Sunnah as they call it. There is some support for this belief in many of the countries. Like, you can see that the majority of Egyptians or Pakistanis or Jordanians apparently, because it's not just the government, right? So religion does impact belief. They do agree with the fact that if somebody leaves Islam, they're supposed to be killed. In Turkey and Lebanon is not that bad, but still, I mean, when we say 5% of people believe, this is supposed to be the most liberal country, right? But I think even 5% of people believing that you're supposed to be killed for just changing your opinion about something, yeah, a lot of these Muslims believe that religion should be free, to each their own religion. That's in the Quran. But that's for people that are not yet Muslim. If you are Muslim, you cannot change your mind. Well, you can. They say you're free to change your mind. We'll just kill you, right? That's actually very interesting, because a lot of people will say this hadith can't be authentic because the Quran says that to each their own religion, right? So if the Quran is above a hadith. So if the Quran guarantees freedom of religion, this hadith cannot be true. But the Quran itself says that non-Muslims will burn forever in hell. So this is not a contradiction. You are free to believe whatever you want, but there are going to be consequences. It's like holding a gun on somebody and you say your wallet or your life. So you're free to not give out your wallet. You just die. That's a choice that you have. So if the Quran introduces hell as a consequence of not being a Muslim, and that still doesn't contradict with the fact that everybody is free to choose their religion, therefore killing somebody for leaving Islam also doesn't contradict having the freedom to choose your religion. These are some of the people that paid a great price for speaking out against Islam. Some of them died, some of them got stabbed, some of them got thrown out of their country, some of them are in jail. In Saudi Arabia, you actually get, you have it in your school textbook, that it gives you the reasons why it's okay to kill somebody when they leave their religion, Islam. However, even with all that pressure, atheist activism or secular activism is not, it still exists in Islamic countries. There's a lot of examples of people that, against all odds, they speak out and they try to make their opinions heard. This is in Iran, there's actually a huge social media movement in Iran with girls taking off their hijab and taking a risk of taking their pictures of themselves without their hijab and posting it on Facebook as their small way of protesting against what they see is a violation of their rights. You know, for a lot of people, it might seem like, you know, taking off a hijab, like, who cares? Just, like, it's a hijab. You just put it on. It's not that big of a violation of human rights, right? But for a lot of people there, this is a symbol of every oppression, you know. So if you can't speak out, if your freedom has been violated in so many ways, a simple act of taking off your hijab says a lot about what you believe in, and because this is a huge risk, you know. From time to time in Iran, it might differ, you know, based on who's in power and who's trying to make a statement. Sometimes you see girls and boys in park holding hands, and then 1 year after, everybody with just a little bit of hair will get arrested and thrown in jail. So it really depends on the time. So, you know, criticizing Islam by ex-Muslims becomes very important, because when you have the far-right groups and their attack on Islam is more xenophobic, more source based on bigotry, and when we are confused, when our arguments are confused with their arguments, and we are shut down because when we are thrown out of liberal circles because of our criticism of Islam, these far-right movements, they become the only game in town. They become the only people that are standing against Islam. And they don't care about what liberals say about them, right? So when nobody is listening to legitimate arguments against an ideology, then people flock to these far-right movements because they are afraid of what's happening. And they see that these are the only players that they could, and that's why they become more popular. If ex-Muslims are a perfect tool against Islam, because it's harder to accuse them of bigotry, because they come from the same cultural background, they come from the same ethnic background. However, the interesting thing is that the leftists, because for a lot of people on the left, it's hard to make sense of ex-Muslims, right? Because they associate everything that criticizes Islam as a far-right movement, right? But when they see ex-Muslims and they see people from the region are criticizing Islam, they have to somehow make this phenomenon fit their narrative. So what they do is they accuse us of being brainwashed by Westerners. They accuse us of being puppets of the imperialist West. And that is, a lot of ex-Muslims, they find it very offensive and a huge sense of betrayal. Offensive because it seems to them that people from the West are suggesting that they are incapable of independent thought. They are incapable of doing exactly what many people on the left have done with Christianity, of analyzing the religion and deciding that it's bullshit. They think that if you think that, you must have been influenced by the far right in the West. And also a sense of betrayal, because a lot of these people in the Middle East, in Indonesia, in India, in Bangladesh, when they freed themselves from religion, they were hoping for a sense of unity with other atheists all around the world or other secularists. And when they come to these people from the left in the West, they get pushed aside and as bigots, which makes no sense. But also, it's strange because they are fighting for the exact same things. They are fighting against homophobia. They're fighting against misogyny. They're fighting for freedom of speech, and they come here and they think that the people on the left are their natural allies, and they don't see any sense of support. It seems to them that people from the left here only want Muslims to not be as bad as the terrorists, and that as good as it could get. As long as you are a peaceful, moderate Muslim, that's good. Atheism may be too soon for you guys. You guys have not matured enough to get to that level. You guys still need religion. It's cute that you think you could be a secularist, but just don't kill each other. That's the standard that we want from you guys. The thing is that atheist activism or any arguments against Islam is nothing new in the Middle East. This is not a Western invention. This is something that a lot of philosophers and scientists openly did for many years. Even in the capital, in Baghdad, in the capital of the Islamic Caliphate, we had scientists that were absolutely atheistic or even anti-Islamic. At that time, the governments were not that oppressive against free thought, which is weird because it seems like we're going backward. The confusion is very strange because, for me, I understand why Muslims get confused when we criticize Islam and they see it as a personal attack. For a lot of Muslims, Islam is part of their identity. So when I criticize Islam, to them it seems like a personal attack on them. And usually the way I try to make them feel that I'm not personally attacking them is that I ask them, do you find atheism ridiculous? And they say, of course. And they say, well, do you think you finding atheism wrong is a personal attack on me? And they say, no. I'm like, well, there you go. I disagree with Islam. That doesn't mean I hate you. I just disagree with you. But for them, separating those two things is very hard. And I understand that. But I don't understand it when the same confusion happens among the leftists here. Because they have done the exact same thing with Christianity. They criticize Christianity for being when it goes against gay rights, women's rights, any kind of whenever Christianity is oppressing anybody's rights, they're the first ones to speak out. But when we do the same thing against Islam, they accuse us of bigotry, and they keep on bringing examples of peaceful Muslims as if we're talking about people, not ideas. Yeah, so this is exactly the same thing I said. So liberals basically are supposed to be champions of liberty, but when we try to do that in Islamic countries, they don't support us, because apparently what they are fighting for is only good for where they live, but not good for where Muslims live. So what I mentioned is this goes along with the narrative that they try to make us fit in, which is ex-Muslims, they call us native informants. And this goes along lines of us being puppets of the Western imperialists. As if we don't have as if we ourselves cannot come to the conclusions that they have came up with. And this is Sarah Haider. She's the founder of Ex-Muslims of North America. She basically, it goes along with the sense of betrayal that she feels, because she feels betrayed by her own community. But now when she comes to the West, people are accusing her of being part of the far-right movement, and she's basically being... So ex-Muslims, they get hit 3 times, right? We get hit from Muslims because we left Islam, we deserve to die. From the far-right, even though we're not Muslim anymore, we still come from the same cultural background. Their problem is not really with Islam, their problem is more xenophobic, so it doesn't matter if we change our opinion about Islam. So the far right hates us. And the left hates us because when we talk about Islam, they group us in with the far right. So basically ex-Muslims have no home. And the the left has come up with this solution with regards to Islam is to support reformist movement, but I'll get to that later actually. So the left, the liberal left, which was always tries to portray itself as the champions for human rights. Now, when they have achieved a lot, now they are just trying to save people's feelings instead of caring about the things that they have historically been fighting for and been very successful at for many decades. Now that they are needed elsewhere, now they're just the champions of people's feelings instead of fighting against violence, misogyny, and fighting for people's liberty. So regarding the solution that the left has found. So they are clinging on this really fringe group of Muslims, which they call themselves the reformists. And they try to portray this as true Islam. And Muslim reformists are different from Muslim moderates. Muslim moderates are Muslims that basically care more about their day-to-day lives than Islam itself, right? They call themselves Muslims, but they are mostly worried about their careers or about their jobs, about things that most of us care about. But then you have the Muslim fundamentalists, and then you also have the reformists. Reformists do spend a lot of time caring about Islam, but they are trying to portray true Islam as something different than the fundamentalist Islam. The thing is that these Muslim reformists, even though they have achieved a lot and they have gained a lot of attention in Western media, among Muslims themselves, they're not taken very seriously at all. For most Muslims, the idea of Islam needing reform is absolute blasphemy. Islam is and has always been perfect. Even reformists themselves, they understand this and they try to not portray themselves as reformists. They try to portray themselves as people that are bringing Islam back to its original form. But the way of doing that is they look at the Quran and look at the Hadith and they come up with this really strange gymnastic arguments to interpret things in ways that is very different from what you will get when you read the text. But a lot of atheists here look at their arguments and find them strange, but also the Muslims themselves find their arguments by reformists ridiculous, because for thousands of years the Quran and the Hadith have been interpreted by a lot of scholars, and none of them came to the conclusion that these reformists have. The translations and the interpretations that they come up with is so different, and basically they're trying to convince everybody that everybody has got it wrong until they came along. But the thing is that the audience of the Muslim reformists is not Muslims. What they write and when they talk, they're talking to Westerners and they're trying to sell Islam, and they know that they don't have an audience among Muslims. A lot of Muslims find Muslim reformists more offensive than non-Muslims that are criticizing Islam, because they're thinking that they are betraying Islam. They see them as people, as mushrikun. This is something that the Quran has warned everybody about. As basically people, as pretenders, people that claim to be Muslims but they're not. Alright, I'll just describe what you're seeing here. This is a picture of a girl in Mecca, next to the Kaaba, the house of God, right? She's holding a piece of paper written on it that says Atheist Republic, right? And she was really scared when she took this picture, which I wouldn't do that if I was her. But that's really brave, and people would ask, why would you take such a huge risk? And if anybody saw that, you would. I would be surprised if you live to see another day. But it's hard to communicate with somebody that has always been free. How frustrating it is for you not to be able to even say what you think. And when you live under that kind of condition, any small form of rebellion, any form of like taking off your hijab and taking a picture, any form of writing on a piece of paper, hey, I'm an atheist, I'm posting it somewhere and people not finding out, that's just a way of just expressing yourself when you couldn't have otherwise. This went viral on our Facebook page when we posted. This was her way of trying to say like, hey, you might not know my name, you might not who I am, but I'm with all of you out there. Because of this picture, we raised enough money for her to get her out of there. And now she's in Germany. This one is from Algeria. She wrote Atheist Republic. This one is from Morocco. This one is from Lebanon. This one is from Pakistan. See, he didn't even feel safe to put his hand in there because Pakistan is really... Actually, it's interesting because the countries where people feel safe to show their faces matches those statistics that we saw, right? The higher the number is, the least likely we see people showing their faces in these pictures. We get a lot of these pictures. This one is from Tunisia. So these pictures, when we put this on our page and told people to send pictures to show their solidarity, what we were surprised about is that we usually get them from Islamic countries. We don't get that many from Europe. We don't get that many even from Canada or United States. We put this on our Facebook, on our website, and they all come, 80% of them come from Islamic countries. And most of our newsletter subscribers, most of our Facebook page, fan pages, they're all from either Islamic countries or very religious countries like Philippines or Brazil. I think the more the people feel like they can't express themselves openly in their own community, the more they try to find outlets like our website to do so. But another thing is that these pictures show that there is a huge demand for that kind of activism. So this idea that people in Islamic countries are not ready for secular movements and maybe we could just hope for a reform movement is nonsense. The fact, and the interesting thing is that the reform movement, even though it gets so much attention, even Sam Harris did one with Majid Nawaz. I mean, I love Majid Nawaz, I love Irshad Manji. These are Muslim reformists, right? But their numbers, they are not convincing Muslims. They are convincing Westerners that, hey, we might have a more peaceful version of Islam. But it is the ex-Muslim movement right now that is achieving huge numbers in the Middle East, in other Islamic countries. The younger generation of people in these countries, they are in much greater numbers leaving Islam rather than being convinced in a more moderate version of Islam. People that take Islam seriously, most Muslim moderates don't take Islam seriously. People that take Islam seriously either become radicalized or leave it altogether. It's very rare for somebody to read the Quran and read a verse that says that you could hit your wife and come up with an interpretation that it does not mean that. This last page shows that if you go to atheistrepublic.com, there's a green button almost on every page that if you click, you could leave an audio message. And when we did that, there was a lot of people from many different countries that left us an audio message. So if you also go to Atheist Republic, and if you want to leave an audio message, if you want to leave a message of support for ex-Muslims, or if you want to share your thoughts or ideas about anything, you could leave it. You just go to atheistrepublic.com and click one of those green buttons, and it's going to be there.